An Uber driver was found guilty in the death of a passenger, this time for allowing him to exit the vehicle. Let's talk about it. Welcome everyone, Mark here from Uber Hints, and it seems like some of the more interesting Uber news lately has been coming out of Australia. And this time I'm really intrigued because this relates to a story that came out of Florida just a week ago. And in that story, you may remember the passenger exited the vehicle and was struck by a couple of cars. And we had some discussions here on what should we do about that. And one of my suggestions was to possibly use or engage the child locks in our cars. And many of you came back and said, not such a good idea, Mark, because the child lock will, once it's engaged, can only be opened with a handle from the outside. All right, now, what happened in Australia is almost the opposite. The person exited the vehicle, but the driver was found guilty for allowing him to exit. Meaning, had there been a child lock in place, that passenger would not have been able to exit, and our driver would not have been found guilty. So let's take a look at this story. The headline says, Uber driver guilty over passenger's death. An Uber driver whose passenger died when he got out of the car and was hit by a bus in Sydney has been found guilty of negligent driving occasioning death. So the driver was found guilty because his passenger got out and was hit by a bus. And it says this happened back in June, on June 17th of last year, 2017. This individual, Samuel Thomas, had been drinking at a party with colleagues. Isn't it interesting how so much of this happens when people are boozing it up? And I know this sounds like I am a broken record. Do any of you remember what a record is? And I keep saying, hey, you know, when we pick up drunks, the risk increases. Now I know part of our money comes from driving drunks. Part of the reason that they say Uber exists is to get drunk people home safely. But that risk is affecting us. In this case, someone might end up going to jail simply because he was driving a drunk passenger home. Mr. Thomas has been drinking at a birthday party with colleagues and caught the Uber home with two other people, Stephen Ronning and Greg Hensman. I don't know if it's important that we know their names. They're two of his friends. And the victim's intoxicated friends were woken by the sound of the door, the car door opening, and it was captured on the closed-circuit television of the bus that hit him. Now, here is why they are putting the driver on trial and why he was found guilty. It said the interior light of the vehicle was open, or was on rather, because the door opens, the light turns on. So the interior light was on, and the prosecutor says, and this is a quote, 6 seconds of light within the car is significant warning. And in my view, Mr. Islam, he's a driver, should have been alerted to something being amiss. So they're saying that it is the driver's fault because the door had apparently been open for as long as 6 seconds. The only explanation is Mr. Islam was far more fatigued than he admitted. And she was not convinced, this was the magistrate, the judge, not convinced that he had slept during his breaks as long as he testified. So they're making some assumptions here that, and I don't think, I don't know, you know, I'm not a legal scholar, but the fact that the door was open 6 seconds should have warned that driver. How, I don't know how the driver can really be responsible here, except the driver pulled away is apparently what happened. I find that he is guilty of the charge of negligent driving occasioning death beyond a reasonable doubt. The magistrate, who I think is comparable to a judge in the U.S., was named Mary Ryan, and she said she found the driver, and here's a quote, did not keep proper lookout when Mr. Thomas opened a rear passenger door while stopped at a red light before he accelerated. So, Apparently, the person gets out of the car, the driver takes off when the light changes. How that caused the person to get hit by the bus, I'm not sure. I haven't seen the footage, but did he tumble out because of the accelerating vehicle? I don't know. But here is my take on this. Now, we have been arguing back and forth, should we put locks on a door? Had locks, for example, child safety locks, been in place, this drunk would not have been able to open the door. He would not have fallen out of the car when the car accelerated. He would not have been hit by a bus. Who's at fault when a drunken person opens a door, falls out of a car, and gets hit by a bus? It doesn't seem to me that it is the driver's fault. They're saying the driver is at fault because he should have known something was amiss. In the case in Florida, I suggested that we lock doors, and I also suggested that how often does this happen? And just as soon as we posted that thing a couple days later, what happens? We get another story. Now, granted, this is almost a year and a half old. And it's just hitting, now I'm sure it hit the newspaper when it came out, but we may not have gotten all that news here across the pond. The driver has a little bit of responsibility, absolutely. We're supposed to keep our riders safe, but I think the rider has fault in this too, and probably the bigger fault. They're the one that opened the car door. They're the one that fell out, right? The driver did not open the door. So what would you do? Do you think, now this brings it back, do you lock your door so it can be open from the outside? Do you take your chances? I say don't pick up drunks, but it's not just a drunk. Anyone could open a door and do something like that. Now, what if this had happened, I don't know what time of day was, I'm looking here, oh, guess what, 3 a.m. Are we catching a pattern here? Drunks, late at night, getting in trouble in your vehicle. What I was going to say is, if this was in the afternoon, you might not notice your dome light on, right? You might not notice the interior lights on. Would that change things? I think rather than worry about do I lock the door or not lock the door, I'm worrying about do I pick up drunks at 3 a.m.? That's where my thoughts are going.
And now for something completely different.
Now, we're going to talk about yesterday's quiz. Some people have been complaining about it, and I'm telling you, this is right out of the pages of the Wisconsin Driver's Handbook. You can argue if you want. Your argument's not with me, it's with the state of Wisconsin. One person, I'm not going to mention who they are, must have done 10 posts about taking a defensive driving course. They challenged me on the distance should be, or the distance, how far you should be behind somebody should be in distance, not in seconds. Hey, the faster you go, the more the distance increases with seconds. So we gotta use our melon once in a while. I did the math and I posted it there. Matter of fact, I think I still have it written down here somewhere, just to give you an idea. So we talked about the 4-second rule. At 55 miles per hour, 4 seconds is 320 feet. At 65, it's 381 feet. At 80, it's 469 feet. So yeah, the faster you go, the more the distance is going to increase. Whether you're talking seconds or feet, hey, you get the same result. You're further back from the vehicle. Those are rules of thumb. Of course, you know, so many things are going to factor in. Are you driving a car? Are you driving a truck? How much weight is the vehicle? How good are your tires? What type of pavement are you on? There's all kinds of variables. But, you know, these are estimates. It gives people something to go by, some kind of an estimate, because most people have no idea. All right, someone also called me on. I misspoke. I was thinking 300 feet is a football field. I said 300 yards are a football field. All right, call me a liar. My estimate was off. So that 300 yards is 3 football fields, right? 500 yards is 5 football fields. Forgive me. Hey, guess what? I'm human. You guys are really starting to pick on me lately, for crying out loud. Go over to Kevin's channel and pick on him for a change. So anyways, it was, or better yet, pick on Chicago, okay? Chicago deserves it. If you want to pick on someone, don't pick on me, pick on Chicago. And I did get out of Chicago the other night, by the way. I got out of Chicago safe and sound, and I am making this video from Ottawa, Canada. And the weather's just as miserable up here. So rather than going out to a fine dinner, I'm spending it here with all of you. So as I said, leave your comments down below. I'd really be fascinated to hear what you think about our responsibility with keeping people in our car. Especially since Australia decided that if I don't keep them in my car, I can be found guilty of negligence in the death of a human being. Thanks for watching. I'm Mark with Uber Hints.